What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Sun Belt Syndicate, the one with the return of the Big Johnson. You guys have been waiting patiently for this all day. Welcome back, Seth, to the program. We've missed you, man. Glad you've been throwing guests our way even when you haven't been here, so we do appreciate that for real.
Still thinking about you guys.
Yeah, well, we are too.
Back.
And I
thank you.
You snuck in some looks on Instagram at least one of the past 2 weeks, if not both of them. So
I've had to make sure my children are up to par. So
yeah,
thanks for checking in.
Speaking of checking in, guess who's checking in? As always, Artie Cat, hello, Dominic, Marvin, and Seth. Yeah, man, thank you for tuning in. We always know we are going to get you on the program. Literally, we need to get him on the program. I keep saying that, but let's
3 weeks left. Yeah. Let's get Artie on.
Yeah, we got to get him on. Before we get too much into it, Dubby, guys, check it out. I got 2 flavors here, both really good. I like the tart stuff, caffeinated beverage, no carbonation, and you mix and match as much as you want with the flavors. So promo code down below, SB Syndicate at checkout. Hopefully some people checked out last week when they had the 20% code with the SB Syndicate. I think it's back down to about 10 now, but still it'll help you with the shipping aspect. You can get your W Energy. As always, part of collegefootballdogs.com and Dog TV as we continue to expand. Check out your football articles, guys. I mean, the website is tailored to football, but they also allow us to do these podcast things that cover an array of sports. So we do appreciate that, but definitely go check out them for your source for college football news. We got a lot of good writers. We have more FWAA, Football Writers Association of America writers, than ESPN.com does. So
wow,
definitely something to keep an eye on as we move forward and we try to continue to expand. But right now we're going to get back to baseball. Like we said, Seth's coming back after 2 weeks.
Yeah, we don't like to go off topic, so let's stay on the narrative.
No, we definitely going to, straight like an arrow, and Marv, man, I think Marv has set a record for different backgrounds for us, maybe podcasters in general. So, Marv, where are you at today?
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow, nice. That's classy.
Yeah.
Is there is that mountaineer stuff behind you though?
Yeah. So my friends Sam and Nikki, I think you probably met them at tailgates before.
Okay.
They live down here in Charleston. I'm down here working. Convinced the wife to get the kids out of school early today to come down here so they could hang out with them. So yeah, they're app grads. So no better place to do this podcast than right here.
Yeah, it's a nice background setting. It's a little better than my makeshift sign right in front of my window over here. What
I've
it
got
is.
Clothes hanging behind me. So yeah.
Nice.
The
You got like a nice ring.
Yeah.
That you just scribble. You should just scribble your name over it with like dry erase marker, so you can just erase it before you leave. You're like, is that a diploma? Is that what's in the middle?
No, that's a United States Department of Commerce certificate of appreciation.
Well, there you go. You could scribble your name over that too.
Oh, there's both their diplomas there.
Okay. I wasn't far off.
And then
very nice, guys.
And Dexter on the other side.
Yeah. Nice. Let's add this in as we change looks here. Return of the Big Johnson. As we said, Seth is back with us. We do have to, again, thank you for bringing in, it was the 2 guys from Troy who you met in Boone and brought them into the show. And that was an awesome show, man. They were really good guys. And guess what, guys? Another syndicate bump right after that, right?
Yeah. A whole team syndicate bump.
As Troy went on. Exactly. So, yeah, let's talk about some guys who need a bump real bad. And that's the 3 of us. Wow.
I'm 500. I'll take that.
Yeah, that's 15 and 15 for you, Marv. Seth, 12 and 18. Again, I'm a 3-game set behind because I let a guest picker do mine, and I didn't take credit for his picks. I should have, because it'd probably look a little better on my side. But hey, look, we did call the Cajuns over Southern Miss, which was a hell of a series, though. I mean, that one was absolutely fantastic. Again, tonight, I talked about these guys, but for everyone listening and watching, we're probably going to skip over most of what happened last weekend since we're so far removed, and we're going to focus more on kind of what we expect or what we think may happen this weekend because we're a little bit closer to that. But yeah, we usually save this for the last thing, but we're going to go over the picks first. I called Troy, so I was right in the fact that they would win, but I did not call a sweep, so no credit there. I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on that one? Were you? I mean, I guess you were surprised by it because you both had Coastal winning that series 2-1.
Very surprised by this week because that was in Conway, correct?
It was. Wait.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I thought Coastal was going to take this. I mean, I've said all along that Coastal's the best team in the league until someone proves them wrong. When Coastal played Louisiana, they took 2 of 3 from them. And then, yeah, to get swept at home. I mean, listen, Troy's a damn good baseball team. Like, there's no way around that. But to get swept at home is bad. I mean, and as tight as the standings are, gosh, they were what, second place and now they're 6th. So that was a big series for them to lose.
Yeah, I agree. I've not been on the Coastal train very much this year, so it is still shocking to see. I'm glad to see Troy playing well. Like I said, I've been out for a few weeks, but I've been following it closely. Troy's making some noise, and I definitely think it was a big shocking sweep down Conway. I don't think it's the end of the world for Coastal, but there's still a lot of baseball to be played.
Yeah. Coastal's got another big series this weekend.
Oh yeah, they do, and we'll definitely be talking about that one as it was one of the headlines on the thumbnail for the episode tonight. I think the thing that played into that series, and Hayden had mentioned this, the guy from Fifth Quarter Coastal Carolina, he made a really good point. Almost like twice and it wasn't like they got blown out. Right, they were close, hard-fought games, so that's going to take a lot out of you. They used a lot more pitchers than they probably wanted to do in order to even play those games. So now you're coming in 2 midweek games, tough losses, and Troy had no midweeks. Troy had no games. They were well rested. Now, that's where you ask the question, right? Like, Coastal's angry. I think, was it Marv? Was it you that said that they might be angry coming in this one because they did lose both midweeks?
Yeah, but to your point, to Hayden's point. They traveled, from Omaha to Conway. That's not a short trip. I'm assuming they were on an airplane. And I think in that first game, they used 8 pitchers. So you would have thought, they just went out and lost to an unranked team back-to-back nights. You think they might come back with a chip on their shoulder and say, all right, conference play, we've got a chance to be number 1. I don't know if the travel fatigue and the fact that they burned a lot of arms played into it, but I don't know, man. Like I said, just – really surprised by the sweep. Yeah,
I was definitely. I mean, like I said, I took Troy to win because of the rest versus the weary, but I never would have predicted a sweep. Not in I'd probably not even in Troy, to be honest with you, but definitely not in Conway. I thought they'd at least sneak one victory there, but again, 0 for 3 for all of us across the board there. And then guess what, guys? None of us took App State to sweep. We talked about earlier this season how difficult it is to sweep, and we just saw 2 in a row in these last 2 series that we picked. Very tough look for us, but I don't know. I mean, at least Seth took him to win the series, and so we can give Seth some credit there. But Marv and I were not quite as optimistic. But I did say that it was more of a head versus a heart pick. I wanted to pick App, but Georgia State's been explosive. Man, I mean, they've beaten some people, they've swept some people, so I just don't know, going into that one, what I felt like I could have been confident in taking App in that one. So I don't know. You guys is that kind of the same thoughts and feelings on that?
Never been so happy to be wrong.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, we're App fans, right? We all went to App. Super happy they got this week, but I didn't see it coming. I mean, I can't say that. Heck, I didn't even pick them to win the series. I thought the winds had left the sails after getting swept by JMU and kind of struggling after that. But they're playing good ball right now. I mean, we'll get to it in the next graphic. They took, the number 13 team in the country down to the wire last night. So I'm happy to be wrong. I hope they keep it rolling, but no, didn't see it happening.
I think one thing I said earlier in the year, and I said it for a couple times shows, but baseball's such a long season. You know, we were a month and a half ago, whenever we started this, we were on the Arkansas State train, you know, and then we went to
Yeah.
and then we went to the Georgia State train. I've been on the Georgia Southern train, and all of a sudden nobody's talking about Troy. Now look where Troy's at. You know, baseball's such a long season, but it's all about getting right at the right time. And Troy's definitely a lot to be talked about. Louisiana's been steadfast all year, but baseball's such a long season. You find out who they are, and App's playing well when they're supposed to be playing well. So big series with South Alabama this weekend. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, what's keeping App in games and series? I'm just looking at stats. So App's got the second highest batting average in the conference, most runs scored, most hits, third best slugging, second best on base, number one in RBIs, dead last in ERA. So we're having to get the runs across the plate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard, so our one of our mainstays too, Neil, who's a big App fan, he's traveled to quite a few midweek games. He gave me pretty much the rundown after that one. Unfortunately, as you see on your screen here, App did fall to Wake Forest 10-9, number 13 in the country. Wake Forest. That was a neutral site game in Shelby, North Carolina, and I guess because of that reason, there was no broadcast anywhere to be found. The best you could hope for was to listen on the radio or follow along on the stats. And as Marvin and I found out, there were no stats to follow. They had a link, but whenever you went to access it, it wasn't working. So Twitter became our best friends for that game. And it was kind of, in a weird way, it was kind of fun to watch that way because you were just getting chunks at a time, but it was like a storytelling, you know? So credit to App and probably Wake Forest too for giving their fans that information as the game went on, and especially since it was so difficult to kind of follow any other way. But Neil had said, get back to the original point, that App's biggest downfall is probably getting themselves deep into the count, you know, with walks, balls, and then turning those into walks more than they're turning in some good quality pitching to kind of keep that from getting out of hand. And they're kind of getting behind the ball in that regard. Also, it doesn't help when you give up a grand slam because that's what happened late in that game. Actually, Wake Forest had taken the lead. If you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they took the lead 10-7 in the seventh, I think it was. So it looked like, okay, now that, what was it?
It was 7-2 in the fifth. App. It looked like App was kind of might run away with it for a second, and then fell apart. But they battled back.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a back and forth affair, but in big chunks. And then, you know, honestly, we looked at that 10-7 like, man, they let it get away. But then they came back and scored 2 runs in the top of the ninth to make it 10-9. We were hoping for a nice Twitter update, and unfortunately didn't get it as we got the final score instead. Okay, enough of that one as we have a lot more games. And we also have Ben asking us some questions on Arkansas State and their chances against, I guess, JMU. Was that last week? Yeah, that was, I think, last week's setup. But also asking us about this week against Texas State. Artie was saying that nobody saw those series this past weekend coming. I think he means like the sweep aspect because a couple of us predicted the wins. But Artie's also saying Texas State equals lowered expectations. Yeah, I mean, just when you think they might be rounding into form, they do something like this against 11-9, a lot of runs. I mean, you think putting up 9 should give you a good chance, but unfortunately, Roadrunners put up 2 more. I guess to me, one of the more shocking surprises in this Tuesday set was actually Jacksonville State taking down Georgia State in a 10-5 game. As we've seen, Georgia State can explode offensively with the bat, and you would expect them to put up probably more than 5 runs against a team like Jacksonville State, but they don't. So they come away with a loss there. La Tech taking down ULM yet again. Unfortunately, that's probably to be expected. Anybody else have any thoughts on the rest of these games showing up here?
JMU and a slugfest, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, no, rain delay that like game finished after 9 o'clock.
Didn't even know Georgetown had baseball.
I didn't either. They have football too, as I found out in the fall.
Are they 1AA?
I think so. One of the kids, I think it was the reason I found out is I think one of the app players had transferred to Georgetown to play football.
Gotcha.
I don't remember who it was. But I think
It's FCS now, Seth. It's not 1AA.
Sorry.
Glory days.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, get it right, Seth. Man, we're gonna have to
Sorry.
look for your replacement on this podcast again. Oh man.
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. We pay nothing. Who wants to come on and do this? Southern Miss in a tight affair with New Orleans, as we talked about previously. New Orleans gave like a handful of Sun Belt teams some trouble last year. Just a quality squad, really. I mean, I don't know what their overall record is, but they seem dangerous every time one of our teams plays against them. So they're right kind of in the heart of Sun Belt land down there, right there in New Orleans, obviously. And then Troy crushing Alabama State. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. They just continued to roll against a team that they literally should do that kind of thing against. And let's see. Eastern Kentucky demolishes Marshall 12-5. And then again on Wednesday, they get closer to 2-1. And then Georgia State does finally explode with the bats, although they allowed 11 runs versus Mercer. Anybody have thought? I mean, South Alabama beats UAB 5-3. Alcorn gets destroyed in a run rule versus the Warhawks of ULM 17-2. I think I saw someone went back and forth with me on Facebook on that. Alcorn State, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly from the conversation, is 2-22 on the season.
Ooh.
Wow. What quarterback went there?
Steve McNair.
My man.
Just midweek game thoughts to me. Obviously, would have loved to seen App pull it out against Wake. Marshall, God, I hate it for him. We kind of talked that maybe having the new stadium, maybe they turn the corner. They haven't, unfortunately. Maybe we need to get some Marshall players on the podcast and they can get the bump.
Yeah. I think that's done past.
Yeah.
I don't think they go out to eat.
Maybe not worth it. Oh man.
Yeah.
You didn't see any when they were up there in Boone?
No. They were with their families for some reason. It's weird.
Oh. Interesting.
Nobody got it. Never mind.
Well, I want to do this at the top of the show, but we got rolling pretty quickly. Speaking of Marshall and App State, we want to send thoughts and condolences to Jack Murphy and his family. Obviously, tragic incident there that happened with him, and he had played previously for both schools and teams, and not an easy time, especially I'm sure with Seth being up there in Boone. A lot of people are talking about that, and just concerned.
Yeah. Sad stuff, man.
His teammates, his friends, his family. Yeah. Make mention. People, obviously follow these sports, and we like to have fun with it. But there's a serious aspect that's bigger than sports, and it's our lives. And anytime somebody loses theirs, it's tragic. It doesn't matter how it happens. So, just want to just mention that before we move along. Now we will get into the standings. In fact, we've got some comments to catch up on too. Ben James has given us a rundown on why Arkansas State will win their series over Texas State, or won their series over Texas State. Arkansas State had a player return from injury. He took a little time off, and showing why he's the power of the Arkansas State offense. His name is Will French, and Artie is giving him some credit, saying well done to Arkansas State, and that their pitching did pretty well all series. And Ben's also saying it's off topic, but Arkansas State basketball winning the Sun Belt this coming season. Well, we'll see about that. This one, we'll go back to the baseball as we've got the standings up here. Take a look once again, as I mentioned to these guys too. Anybody who's looking at this, comparing it to the Sun Belt website, it is not going to match. And the reason it's not going to match is because we have set it up so that you can take a look at this and see where teams would be in the Sun Belt Conference tournament if it were to start today. For some reason, the conference website shows the tiebreaker as the overall record. So obviously some teams would be shuffled around in this. So this should be, and I've double checked it, so I believe it's correct. This should be the look if the conference tournament were to start today, where these teams would be seated. So the only teams that you would not have making the conference tournament remain Texas State, ULM, Arkansas State, and Marshall, and you'd have ODU, JMU, Georgia State, and South Alabama battling it for, I guess, Marv, what did they call that, a play-in game? Is that what they've called it?
I don't know what the technical thing they're calling it, but yes, it's essentially a play-in.
And Raging Cajuns, if you can see, it's probably too small on that graphic to really make out, but they are ranked nationally number 18. Again, we go by the D1Baseball.com poll, number 18 in that poll, which is pretty good because I believe it's the highest ranking they have out of all the 4 or 5 rankings. I believe literally it went 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 across the board. So an aggregate score of right around the 20 mark if you average them out. But again, highest in this one. Easy to see why, as we've seen them come in and continue to play pretty well. They haven't won as many in a row as they did at one point this season. What was that? Was it 16 games, guys? You remember off the top of your head?
I think it was maybe 14. It was a bunch of games.
14 or 15, I think.
They were.
Yeah. Well, they've only won 1 right now, but that's still good enough to keep them in the lead in this conference by at least 3 games over Troy. They're sitting at 17-4, while Troy sits at 14-7. Again, we just talked about Troy kind of coming up and getting hot at the right time. 32-14 overall. So really impressive all the way around for those top 2 teams in the conference. And then we get to 2 teams tied at 12-9, although Georgia Southern has already beaten Southern Miss in a series. So they would take that tiebreaker to claim the 3rd spot right now. And I'll let you guys talk about what you think of those 2 black and gold teams right there on top of each other at the 4 and 5 spot right now.
I think Southern Miss has kind of stayed right where we think they were going to be all year. We thought maybe they'd be up at, the top 3 for sure. And like we talked about before we came on, I think the other black and gold teams surprised us a little bit. They swept down in Atlanta. I don't think anybody really predicted that. We all thought they would at least take the series, but these last few weeks, the 2 black and golds, it's going to be interesting to see what happens between them. It's going to be a fun last month here coming down the stretch.
Yeah, there's only 3 weekends left. It's still only 3 weekends left. Still kind of log jam there in the middle. I mean, we saw, I think App was 9th last week, and now 5th. Coastal was 2nd last week, now 6th. So, I mean, every series is super important for the standings. You want to be in that top 6 so you don't have to play that single elimination play-in game. But, I mean, let's talk about some surprises here and just kind of want to get your thoughts. Who would have had Georgia Southern at number 3 right now? Who would have had Texas State not making the tournament if the season ended today?
I would have, of the 2, I would have said Georgia Southern at 3 would make more sense and be something I could see more than I could see Texas State at the bottom of the bottom 4, right? I mean, anybody else disagree with that one?
No, I think, well, I've been questioning Georgia Southern for all season, but I think, when we did the episode about pretenders or contenders, I think we took Georgia Southern we all took them as contenders, and they've stayed hot. And I think, the word surprise has kind of gone out the window the last few weeks because this is where they're at now, and I think this is where they're staying at.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I did think they were a contender. I think I told you guys early in the year. I watched some of their early games. I'm like, man, they got some dudes on that team. They're not kind of getting the results that they wanted because you look at it, they were 9-12 out of conference, but playing pretty good baseball. Can't wait to see them come to Boone. Hopefully, App sitting right there, with a chance to jump them. But once again, just super stacked in the middle. I mean, if you look from South Alabama to Troy, I mean, there's 2 games difference there. That's it.
Yeah.
Logjam.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement still to possibly happen. Hardy says Texas State pitching and hitting has gone the way of boxer in animal form. I'm not sure I understand that reference, but maybe you guys did.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
Mark?
Have you ever seen the movie Animal Farm?
I've not.
No.
It's worth a watch.
Animal
you-
House, yes.
You watch it, you'll get it.
Okay,
All right.
got it. Is it a baseball movie?
No.
No. Okay.
Mark sounds pretty serious about it.
Yeah, he's like, no. Oh, man.
I think it's a movie made off of a book. I probably should read the book, but I don't like to read, so it makes sense.
Why read when you can listen to a podcast, right? I mean, come on, here we go. Oh, man. All right, so yeah, I mean, logjam, right? I guess that's the best way to describe. I mean, I guess like you said, Georgia Southern to South Alabama.
From 3rd to 10th, it's 2 games.
Yeah.
That's all it is. From 3rd to 10th, it's 2 games.
Crazy.
So it's just like from last week to this week, it looks completely different.
Yeah.
We could sit here on a Wednesday night next week and be like, it's completely different again. I mean, heck, next thing you know, if South Alabama goes and sweeps out, next thing you know, they're 6th place instead of 10th.
True.
This is a question for you, Dom.
Okay.
Do you think, as we're sitting here talking about how big of a logjam it is, do you think overall, when it comes to tournament teams, is this a good look or a bad look?
So of the top 2, good look, because they've got good overall records. They've got good conference records. When the team like Coastal Carolina that's just lost like that, they're 1 game above 500 in conference. They do have a very good overall record, but now they've dropped out of the rankings. So unfortunately, that's going to hit every single team who's left to play them's RPI, right? I mean, it's not going to really hurt it that bad because they're still high, pretty good in RPI overall. Front loaded with some really good talented teams when they hosted that preseason tournament. I don't know what they call it, but it's hard to say exactly though, because I feel like all these other teams, like if they just win 2 weekend series in a row, you're like Troy is probably 26, 27, 28th in most polls. So they're just outside that top 25. So, if you could have swapped them with Coastal Carolina, now you've got another ranked team in conference. Even if Troy loses, the other team in the conference gets a ranked win, a ranked victory to put on their resume. Right now, as good as Troy is, if they lose a series 1-2, 2 games, they drop 2 games, they're going to be ranked. So they have to continue winning, and then hopefully they can jump into that. But I don't know if anybody else jumps in. I guess you could look at the overall record and say Southern Miss has got a decent chance, sitting at 12-9 in conference, 28-17 overall. So a nice looking overall record. You can look at the RPI and you can compare and contrast that with others that are in the top 25. But I'd say overall it's still kind of right in the middle. If we get a couple results to go the way we kind of need to, as far as getting like that 15 possibly in. I know there were a couple predictions that had 5 teams in right now. As we just discussed before the show started, we probably feel pretty comfortable with 4. But it would be kind of cool to see 5. Just don't know.
I can see it being as low as 3, to be completely honest.
I would say I'd lean towards 3 over 5 at this point, and I would hope for 4. But again, those results have to stay right where they need to be. None of those 4 teams right now can afford to be swept. I don't think. So you get swept, you're probably out.
So what?
Who's your 3?
Obviously, Louisiana and Troy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say
they're not going to leave Coastal out.
What happens if Coastal gets beat by Southern Miss this weekend in a sweep? I think
they've blown. Or sorry, let me think of another word. They've blown Coastal all year. So why not blow them again? I mean, it's ridiculous. And I mean, the RPI is there. I think Coastal, no matter what happens to Coastal the rest of the year, I think they're still in.
So in my opinion, if Southern Miss can win the series against Coastal. Obviously, they'll have 2 more series in the conference tournament, but if they can take 2 out of 3, I think that they're probably the 3rd team for sure. And for the conference as a whole, I don't know what's better for who to win the series if the goal is to get 4 in. But like I said, if you look at just the logjam there in the middle, you asked if this is good or bad for the conference. This conference is super deep. Once again, 3 to 7 is 2 games. Dom, you just said, hey, Southern Miss has got a good record at 28-17. If App doesn't tie that game with Arkansas State and they win that one, now they're 27-15 and they're 12-9 in the same conference, same identical record. Obviously, the RPI is not there. You got Coastal with 27 wins. You got JMU with 25 wins and a high RPI. It's just, I don't know. The depth of the conference could potentially hurt us this year because we're just beating the shit out of each other. Could lead some people out.
I think you're right. I think there's 3 that get in. Actually, you know what? I'm going totally against you. I'm sorry. I think 4. I'm sorry. Southern Miss, Coastal, Louisiana, and Troy. I think there's 4.
So
I could see 4, but I could also see it only being 3. I don't think 5 is a possibility.
Do you leave Troy out? Southern Miss,
No.
Coastal, you don't? Okay.
Troy's too good. I don't think you can leave Troy out. Obviously, now they could get swept their next 3 series, and that could change absolutely everything. I don't see that happening, but I can see 3 for sure, maybe 4. I can't see 5 unless Georgia Southern or an App were to sweep their next 3 weekends,
right?
Or as we discussed, or one of those 5 or 6 seeds wins a conference tournament.
Yeah. But as you also discussed, if one of those teams gets one of these borderline teams gets beat early on, then you're really not going to 5. You're probably going to 4, and one of those teams is replacing the one of the 4. Here's an interesting thing. So Seth says I don't think they leave Coastal out, but listen to their final schedule here. So Southern Miss, we kind of talked about that. That's at Southern Miss down in Pete Taylor Park. Not going to be easy. They play UNC Greensboro. That's not going to improve their RPI there. They play Georgia State, Clemson, who's decent, and then at Marshall. So you think you've got Georgia State and Marshall. That's not really going to help their RPI too much. Actually, Georgia State may have a decent RPI because they've had some decent wins and they've got a pretty good overall record. It's technically a losing record, but it's not bad. It's only 2 games below 500, so they could rectify that very quickly.
The Clemson game alone could push them in my opinion. They're 3rd in the nation.
Okay.
That game alone, I think, could push them in.
I guess I just don't. I guess when you're looking at just straight RPI, yeah, the fact that they could win that one and get a win over a number 3 team, that should probably be enough. Yeah, I guess that's true. Because I was just thinking,
I haven't been around in 2 weeks. Marv, what's JMU's RPI? Are they up to like 4 now?
No, I think they've fallen off just a little bit. I'll look that up, but you're right. I mean, we saw with JMU, we all kind of, obviously they swept App, so I'm going to have to say this with a foot in my mouth, but we all thought that their RPI was too high because they got that 1 win over Arkansas, right? In a 4-game series, not a 3-game series.
Right.
What does it do for a team like App if they would have beat Wake Forest? Because App's RPI is like 70 something.
Yeah.
It would have boosted it a little bit. I don't think Wake Forest is what we thought they were going to be, but it definitely would have helped. But it's not putting them in the tournament by any means, I don't think.
I feel like Wake and Coastal were very similar this year. Both teams probably thought to win their conferences, and both not bad by any means. Obviously, both ranked for a decent amount of the season so far, but both just kind of not really meeting expectations, right? I mean, would it be fair to kind of say that those are kind of mirror images of each other right now?
Yeah. So here, looking at RPI, Coastal's 23, JMU's 27. Yeah.
Crazy.
Troy 46, Southern Miss 47, Louisiana is 51 in RPI. Which absolutely
I still think Troy could Coastal could finish middle of the pack, and they still get they could get bumped over Troy based on just solely on RPI.
I'm trying to find app in here, but I'm hoping I missed them.
Well, while you're looking at that, Artie explained the animal, whatever the thing was.
Marv,
Animal farm.
RPI couldn't be. Who's their best win? 2 games against Coastal.
Who apps? Yeah, by far.
Is RPI based on even losses as well? Like,
I don't know, but you got to think about this too, Seth. Talking about app. App took 2 games against East Tennessee. East Tennessee's 56 in RPI.
okay.
So they're 15 spots above app, and app beat them twice.
And listen to this. This is a constant argument, and I think it exists in basketball to an extent too, but in baseball it seems to be more heavily weighed. If you go to play a team in a midweek, let's just say that game against Alcorn State that who just whooped up on them on Wednesday. ULM. Let's replace ULM with Troy. Let's just replace them with Troy. Say Troy plays Alcorn State. It actually hurts them to go in there and hammer them 23-2. It actually hurts their RPI to play a team that bad and demolish them. They actually get punished for playing that game. And that's long been a conversation in baseball about you can't punish teams for winning. And like they could have won 32-2, which is probably not possible with how they keep the score in check. But regardless, you could demolish a team, run up the score, do really well, and you still get hindered by that. And I think that's something that they need to try and look at, that you shouldn't be punished for playing a game, especially if you win. Obviously, if you lose, that's a different story. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you play a game that's on your schedule, you win it comfortably, but you don't win it by 62 runs. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do there. It just seems kind of foolish to hurt these teams for playing a game like that.
That's one thing you got to give to Coastal is they go hard. You know, who like just Campbell, State, Wake, Carolina, Duke,
Indiana.
I mean, look, Indiana, East Tennessee, Southern Illinois, Winthrop. I mean, you do the math. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's different.
Even though they're middle of the pack, I mean, you can't fault them because of RPI. I mean, just based off who they played.
And that's why the RPI.
How many wins did they have overall?
27.
27 wins. If they'd played the same schedule as some other teams in the conference had played, I mean, they'd have 35 wins at this point. You know what I mean?
Maybe 35. Yeah.
It's a good point. And that was what one of the arguments before Louisiana got ranked was. You won 16 in a row against nobody. Obviously, it doesn't matter. You've seen how hard it is to win, how hard it is to sweep. So it's not nobody. And obviously, that was a disparaging mark against some of the people in the conference. Again, that doesn't come from us. I'm talking about what you saw online. So it doesn't, in some regards, like baseball is also based on how you play and how you play alone to some extent. Obviously, your opponent is a big aspect of that, but if you can stay consistent and you can consistently win, you should be rewarded for that. And obviously Louisiana finally was, and they've also now proven that they should have been with their most recent results here too. But it is an argument that's always made. You didn't play anybody. It doesn't matter if you won 10 in a row. It doesn't matter if you won 9 in a row. Well, I think it does, right? Because it's not easy to do so.
I think it's baseball. It's like we've talked about, the season's so long. It's all about consistency. And look what Louisiana's done. So I don't care. I mean, you win that many games, like whether you're playing anybody or not, you're doing something right. You know, anybody could beat anybody any day of the week. But, I think you take Louisiana and you still, as bad as I've hated Coastal all year. They've played a tough schedule and they've won half of those games. So you can't fault them. You can't leave them out based on that, I don't think.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to get back to Artie's point earlier. He says Boxer was sent to the glue factory by Pig Napoleon. So that's more of the thing. And then he's giving us a hard time saying, come on, App State, the classics aren't banjo music. LOL, I kid. No, it's fine. We'll take it in stride. I got Bull Durham down the street from me. That's a classic that I know about. Tin Horn Productions, big Georgia Southern fan. Georgia Southern has a great chance to sweep ULM. Actually, I'd be a little surprised if they didn't sweep ULM, I guess. Marv, what are your thoughts on that series? Well, don't get too far into it, but just a quick thing, I guess.
Definitely think they win the series. Would not be surprised by a sweep. If they don't win the series, that would be the bigger shocker.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. We'll add Big Johnson back to the screen here as he dropped off there for a second. But Artie Cat says JMU just never looks impressive. Just work a day, but sometimes that's enough. Yeah, it's they. One of the guys on the game recently said it best. They play kind of like the small ball really well. They're not like necessarily the biggest home run hitters, which I believe does App still lead the conference in home runs overall. I think is what I saw last.
Do not now. I just had that pulled up, but no, we are not leading right now. I think Tolly has the most, but I don't think as a team we do anymore.
Okay,
I'll verify.
Gotcha. All right. Getting back to this, what is our next slide? Okay, we're going to talk about the series coming up. Let's jump in. Well, let's save this, but we got Chuck from Everyday Eagles jumping on. He's got a big question or statement really for us. This weekend is going to be good baseball. Southern Miss versus Coastal, epic. We should have one of the series against Louisiana, but our bullpen faltered Friday night. RPI is a strange beast. Shows just how strong the Sun Belt is in baseball. Absolutely. That is one thing that we've been trying to hammer home here as we cover everything, is just how difficult this conference is. Unfortunately, we had a kind of a lame Tuesday night overall, even though we had some decent performances. We just didn't get the wins in some of those games, but that's not going to help the conference overall and the conference rankings, even though those don't really exist. People tend to talk about it like that. But yeah, I mean, I think this conference is one of the strongest baseball conferences. It's one of the conferences that people care about baseball in the most. And we're seeing that even with, teams like App State, with South Alabama coming back around. So as I mentioned that, let's talk about this series first. South Alabama travels to Boone. It looks like from Twitter earlier today, they were there pretty much early this afternoon, maybe late this morning, really. So already in town for that one. What do we think? App State's just swept last weekend against Georgia State. What are we thinking going in this one against the Jags?
I don't see a sweep, but God, we got to take the series here. Once again, I know this is a Sun Belt show, but as an App guy, to stay in the race and to be in that top six, we need to take 2 out of 3, and a sweep would be fantastic. But I could see it going the other way. I love that, but we've kind of seen Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sometimes with them. So it depends on which team shows up. Hopefully being at home will benefit us, but Tin Horn Productions, Apple win 2 out of 3. I'll agree with that.
There we go.
Seth, I agree with you as well.
You going to be able to go to any of these ones, or pay $5 to park to go to these?
Then we'll try to go Saturday. It's supposed to be a little rainy here this weekend, but I think this is probably the most relevant baseball team so far. I mean, this far into the season in quite some time. I think App needs it. I'm with Marv. I think 2 or 3. I don't see the sweep either, but I could also see South Alabama taking 2 or 3 the other way. So I think App pulls it out 2-3. I think they get the Friday night win. They'll lose Saturday afternoon and get the Sunday afternoon win.
Oh man, we got a detailed prediction. I love it.
Hey, I've had enough time to think about it. I've got it.
I'll say we get Friday and Saturday and drop Sunday.
All right.
Okay. I'd be more okay with that, because going into Sunday, you've won the series, and not that I want to say you can afford to lose one, because if App's trying to get to the postseason, they got to continue winning. But you got to be realistic too, that you may think about resting some guys that don't have to go if you've already clinched the series. I don't know though. I mean, what's the thought process of the coaching staff?
App schedule, we don't have a midweek game anymore. Like, it's all conference series. You're not resting anybody.
Okay.
if App wants to make a regional, the only way they do it is 3 sweeps and a deep run into the tournament. Like there's no other way. Even if let's say the App won their next 3 series, but they took them all 2-1, outside of a conference championship win, they still don't make a regional. So there's no resting anybody for a team like App. It's all hands on deck. You try at all costs to win these next 9 games.
I can agree with that. I didn't remember they had no midweeks left after this. So
I'm pretty sure we don't. I thought Wake was our last midweek game. I could be wrong. We might have one more, but I know that we don't have any of the last 2.
I can bring it up right now.
Yep,
no more midweeks. You're correct. All done.
It's all done. Yeah. So yeah, you're once again win at all costs.
9 games left for App. Is that right?
9 games left.
Yep.
And 6 are at home. 6 are at home, but I mean we're playing South, Old Dominion, and Georgia Southern. So I mean we've got all the teams that we're playing are kind of that 3 to 10. So they're all really big series. You can't afford to lose one.
That last one is it? Remind me, is Georgia Southern's at home, right?
Yes, it is.
Woo! That one could be for a lot for Sun Belt tournament seeding, and possibly maybe an outside chance. With how well either team's playing. Really, it's actually going to have that feel of the last game of the football season a couple years ago, where they were playing for the bowl spot.
Yes,
right? It's good. It's probably going to be pretty cool. Hopefully, anyway.
All starts here, though. None of that crap matters if we drop 2 or 3 or get swept.
Very, very, very true. Who do we got up next? I want to get to some of these comments too. We'll loop this back around too, but Georgia Southern has played a gauntlet of a schedule: Georgia, Georgia Tech, Maryland, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Campbell, Kennesaw, and more. Yeah. You said they're RPI, right, Mark?
Yeah, they're, gosh, I need to quit. Their RPI is pretty decent. And like I said, from the very beginning of the season, first couple of weekends I watched them, they didn't get the results they wanted, but I'm just sitting there watching them play ball. I'm like, man, they got some guys. Like, they're going to be fine. So the record doesn't look fantastic because their out-of-conference record's not amazing. But like you said, they played some really, really, really good teams. They weren't scared to schedule.
Yeah, definitely not. That's definitely not at all. They've got a pretty good following when it comes to baseball. I think. I mean, I don't think it's up there with Southern Miss and Louisiana at any point, but they may be up there in the top 5 of people that follow and want to see Georgia Southern do well in baseball. So we've seen their fans pop up on the comments, and again, they're only 3rd or 4th compared to everyone else who jumps on, which is typically Southern Miss and Louisiana fans.
Yeah, so no, I was incorrect. Their RPI is not impressive. App is 76, Georgia Southern 77.
Interesting.
Once again, yeah. I don't like the RPI thing, but apparently some people value it.
Well, and people value it, and the postseason guys really value it, from what I hear. When they're saying when it comes down to end of season and they're looking at who to put in, who to not, like the determining factor is apparently RPI, and that's pretty much it. Which I like the fact that it's the metric, because it does seem to give you some idea. But then to me, you've got to go kind of game by game to be really fair, right? Like, let's say Georgia Southern. You see the same teams every year in your conference, right? So what if they lost a couple conference games or series, but they beat 2 SEC teams on the road and an ACC team at home or something? Like, that would kind of, to me, like, not even just even out, that would probably put them above, because, when you're talking about coaching and familiarity, we talk about it with football too. Like, why does Georgia Southern beat App State in football, until the last 2 years? It's because they see them all the time. They know them the best. And then, you go up to Penn State and Tennessee, you take them to overtime. Well, those teams don't know you. They're not familiar with you. So, yeah, I think you should reward the teams that, get it done against power teams or bigger programs or teams with more money. And also look at the RPI. I mean, like I said, it is important overall, but I don't know if it should be the end all be all. But
I agree. I don't know.
Yeah,
thank God I don't get paid to do this for a living.
yeah. We may be better than some of the guys who do, though. I don't know.
I'd agree with that. I mean, we are the nation's #1 downloaded Stump Baseball podcast. Going back to this, Marshall, I still will say that their Friday and Saturday guys are studs. You could take those guys and put them on any Sun Belt team, and that team's pitching staff got significantly better. But Georgia State gets back on track. I think they take 2 out of 3. Could sweep them, but I don't know. I see them getting back on. Is that in Huntington or is that in Atlanta?
I believe the teams on the right are the home teams.
All right, so because Marshall's at home, they don't get swept. Georgia State takes it 2 out of 3.
Okay. I think I could see that. It's really going to be that interesting aspect of the bats of Georgia State versus the pitching of Marshall in just about every game. I would assume.
Bats of Georgia State. You said who leads the conference in home runs? Georgia State.
So they got that.
Georgia State has 36 or 38. JMU has 36. App has 35. But here's a crazy stat from top to bottom. ULM has the least at 8 home runs the entire season.
What?
App's got 3 guys that have got more than 8 home runs.
Jeez, that's crazy. That is crazy. I'm wondering if that's partly due to like the ballpark. I mean, obviously they've played it enough now that it should have evened out. But like they talk about certain parks in like Coastal's known as kind of a hitter's park, right? Georgia State's home probably seems like a hitter's. I mean, like every clip they put up of Twitter is pretty much a home run. So that kind of makes sense now that you've said it. Now I'm like, yeah, every time I click on something, I see they're going yard. So yeah, and I gotta bring this up because it's great. I actually haven't heard this one before, but Tin Horn Productions is saying Georgia's Taint wins 2-3 over Marshall.
I've never heard that. I'm mad that I hadn't known. That's funny.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a quality one. I'm sure it's old and other people have known about it, but I haven't really heard that one, so I like that. Artie Cat says, I'm sure Georgia State loves to travel. Benches, hooks, and hot showers.
That's funny too.
We got 2 quality comments in a row there. I like that. Kind of goes along with the name of the show. Welcome back to Big Johnson. Speaking of which, he's gone again. So
that Boone internet gets him again.
Yep, they're trying to look for that satellite signal up there. Georgia State's baseball field is easy to hit homers in. Yeah, so that
Georgia State's football game used to be really easy to hit home runs in too.
Yeah. Did you see? I don't know if I shared it with you guys. You may have seen it on your own. Georgia State seems to have officially announced that they are building their baseball stadium now.
I've seen the rendering. I think someone on here who's been following this for way longer than we had says that they've been hearing that they're going to have a new baseball stadium for like a decade now. Be cool to see them build one. I mean, heck, I'd love to tag a App Away series at Georgia State in their new stadium with a Brave series as well. It'd be kind of cool.
Oh yeah, very cool. I would love that. That would be pretty cool. Excuse me, for sure. But it's a little league field, to be honest, in Atlanta. That's what Artie has to say right now. And to be fair, it does seem like your run-of-the-mill high school stadium with the bleachers on the ground and all that good stuff. But hey, honestly, they're competing pretty well in the conference. So at this point, we can make fun of it all we want. They're producing on the field where it matters. So
and that series means a heck of a lot more to Georgia State right now than it does to Marshall. So the matchup of the week.
This one is clearly far and away the matchup of the week. Coastal Carolina traveling down to Pete Taylor Park to meet up with Southern Miss. I don't really know this will obviously be a pick that we make for this weekend. Yeah. I don't know what to make of this though. Like really, really and truly don't. I don't think Southern Miss is obviously what they were last year. I don't think Coastal is far off from what they were last year, but what that was not really. I mean, it wasn't a 2016 run, right? So
yeah,
I don't know.
Here's the benefit: is Coastal did not play a midweek. Hopefully, their pitchers' arms are not exhausted. man, it's kind of like what we were talking with Seth was on about, if there was only 3, it would be Troy, Louisiana, and in my opinion, the winner of this series. It's a coin toss, dude. I honestly wish I could be at the Pete this weekend. That would be, I'm sure the atmosphere there is going to be amazing. That's if this was like the ESPN college football where you could flex a game onto a better time, this would be a series that I would encourage them to flex because this is going to be good baseball.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very good baseball. We'll finish up with some of these guys' comments real quick before I state more. Georgia State plays in a country rec league level stadium, like legit just bleachers on concrete pad. Yeah, really don't know how they recruit in ATL. Well, honestly, they probably don't recruit in Atlanta. They probably go outside of it and just say, hey, the stadium is what it is, but you are going to be living in Atlanta.
Yeah, do you want to, which to some people is a turn on, to other people it's like, why the heck would you want to live in Atlanta?
Right. You're right downtown. I mean, the campus is right downtown. You're probably not far from Braves Stadium. I know they've moved it out of Atlanta technically, but you're obviously not far from really cool, quality Major League Baseball. So that can't be too bad of a thing. Artie says he doubts it. It's been in talk for Atlanta for years. But this one, Artie, the difference here is this one came officially from the school saying that they've earmarked the money. Well, the public-private sector, whatever the heck they've done with it to make it work, it has been officially announced as it is happening. Again, you're right. It doesn't mean it technically is until they literally dig dirt and show us a picture of that. It is what it is. But there is some excitement. I would like to see it for one other reason than it helps this conference overall, right? I mean, when you've got people in nice stadiums filling up the seats, that's a good problem to have, I guess. Marshall has done that, right? Their brand new stadium. People will come to a stadium that's new just to come see it in general. And then if you can win while they're there, you can get them to come back again. And then you can get your things set up to be more like Louisiana, where they're packing out the place all the time. You can get, and then the epitome, the goal, the standard, the golden standard, I'll call it, is who's on screen right now at Pete Taylor Park, who has sold out their baseball allotment for season tickets the past 2 seasons.
It's crazy.
I don't know. I don't know how you compete with that, but that's the golden standard, quite literally.
Dom, if you build it, they will come.
Sticking with the baseball theme, I love it. Yeah. And speaking of building things, we just talked about Georgia State. While Southern Miss is on the screen, they are also going to renovate their basketball arena, which is one of those really old school style domes that's kind of built down into the ground. So the dome itself is kind of like not that tall.
Okay.
It looks like essentially the shell of everything is really going to remain, and they're going to build up around it. So they're going to surround it with other things. It looks like even off to the side of the dome is going to be like a practice facility where they don't have to practice on their game court and stuff. So very, very cool. It's going to be a lot of money. I know a lot of excitement down there for that. Obviously, that's not to do with baseball, but for the school and for the Sun Belt overall, it's a great thing because we all know those types of projects and the size of those things are usually earmarked for your state schools like Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So to see something like that at Southern Miss is a big thing. So glad to see that type of thing going down and happening down there in Hattiesburg. And Artie says he remembers when everyone was worried when Southern Miss was added to the Sun Belt Conference. I can see what you're saying.
Excited would be a better adjective for me than worried.
What was the adjective used?
Excited. I mean, you listen, overall scheme of things, athletics, right? Football is going to get back, in my opinion. They've got a storied program down there, even though they're the Little Rock or the Real Rock. Baseball, they're fantastic. Basketball, I mean, let's just be honest, some of basketball is not anything. It's not anything to brag about. So they didn't bring it down. But I think in other sports, they elevate us more than they hurt us. So
actually, to be fair, I think they have, if you want to say this, they have elevated us in basketball, but not on a national extent, right? Yeah. Having Southern Miss in your basketball conference, no one thinks anything of that. Sorry, that's the way it is for every Sun Belt school. Don't get me wrong there. JMU's one run this year.
State basketball into it. Let's be honest.
Right, exactly. Like even JMU's nice run. I mean, if they can't sustain that for 2 or 3 years, that doesn't mean anything when you're going back and talking about teams that are helping your conference get on a national scale. You'd have to do it repeat if you want to become a Davidson, you've got to do it repeatedly year over year. You have to have a player like Steph Curry who's bringing in viewers. So it's no disrespect to any Sun Belt basketball programs, but Southern Miss did win the regular season title, not just this past season, the season before that. They faltered in the tournament and then didn't make the NCAA tournament. Instead, ended up in the NIT in the old school rules of the NIT. But they have been a quality basketball program. They were a little down this year, but they were also plagued with injuries before the season even started. So there's that. Oh, getting back to the baseball, who
you picking? Actually, save it because we know it's going to be on the pick. So don't let us know.
We'll go there, but I'll say this, and let me bring this up so I can make sure I'm being factually correct here. So keep in mind, for everyone listening, watching, and everything else, Coastal Carolina has now lost 5 games in a row. They've gone 5 games without a win, and they're about to walk into one of the hardest places to win in the Sun Belt in Pete Taylor Park. That's not going to do them any favors. So immediately, I'm thinking home field advantage, Coastal struggling, you're picking Southern Miss. But we've seen Southern Miss kind of falter a little bit at times. I've seen their fans across the board just go like, I'm not sure. We talked about App State being a little Jekyll and Hyde. Southern Miss has got a little bit of that to them. So I don't see either team sweeping. I guess I'll say that. I think this is a 2-1 series, and you could quite literally toss a coin. But I would lean Southern Miss, and I'll, between now and the next 12 hours when we make our picks official, roughly, I'll see if I change my mind. But right now, I'd lean Southern Miss and favor them in Pete Taylor Park. Artie is saying they've had a good run of crooked governors who are alumni. Kudos to the Golden Eaglets and Favre. He didn't want to forget Favre.
That was my very next comment when he get that Artie.
Yeah, they've heard all that before, but I mean, it seems like there's crooked politics everywhere, but in the state of Mississippi, maybe they're at another level. All right, we'll stay away from that talk the rest of the time. All right, going back to Tin Horn Productions, he thinks they have a good shot at sweeping ULM or beating ULM. Was that he didn't say?
He said sweeping. I think.
Okay.
My comment was at least 2-1. I could agree with a sweep. It is at ULM. ULM did beat the worst probably baseball team in the country last night by 15 runs. But this is an important series for Georgia Southern. We talked about it when Louisiana had that like soft spot in their schedule, and we were like, hey, if you want to be at the top of the conference, you got to win those games when you got them. Yeah. This is a series that Georgia Southern's like, just take advantage of it, man. Just go beat the crap out of them. Pad your conference standings. I don't know who they have next weekend when they come to App the last weekend. Like, get it while you can.
Cajuns.
They had the Cajuns. Oh, yeah. Get it while you can. Super important to them right now then.
I think
sweeps are hard. We talk about that every week. But now that you told me that, a sweep super important for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. And you think they just swept last week against Marshall, and you say, oh, look at Marshall's record. They're not any good. But what did we see Marshall go down to Louisiana and do? Is force them to win like 1-run games for 2 out of 3 games, I think, right? Or they might have all been 1-run games. I can't.
That was a pitcher's duel weekend. And it's like we said earlier, Marshall's got some arms. I can't remember the kid's name. Their Saturday guy. He's been pitcher of the week like 3 or 4 times. Like, the kid's a stud. He's gonna get a chance to play at the next level. So sweeping them is no easy task. App couldn't sweep them. But yeah, knowing who Georgia Southern has coming up, considering where they are right now in the rankings, it's a big series, man. They get 2 out of 3 minimum. The sweep would be really good for them.
Yeah, honestly, it'd be good for Louisiana and App State as well, because it's going to help their RPI and it's going to give all these teams a chance to build upon each other. So you're not cheering for Georgia Southern if you're Louisiana or App State fans, but it's not bad if they sweep this one, because it's going to look like a better win on your resume. Or even if you lose, it doesn't look like the worst. So it's kind of like it's okay. Going back real quick, an important note here from Blake. Blake Prospers commenting saying Southern Miss's bullpen cannot withstand Sunday games. They just run out of arms. So again, that's to your point, Marv, that you just said. You can easily see a 2-1 series, and I said somewhat similar, and that could be part of it, right? So Sunday games, watch out if you're a Golden Eagles fan, is what Blake is saying there.
You know what they say in football, right? Like if you got like a couple good running backs, like having fresh legs at the end of the game is really good. In baseball, having fresh arms on Sunday is a really good thing.
Yeah, that's true. Don't have a game on Friday or Saturday where you've got to use 8 pitchers, because that's not going to bode well very well.
I'm going to say this out loud. I'm not a big fan of playing 2 midweek games. I think it's absolutely stupid. You're burning up a lot of arms. I get it. You want to get some looks. You really like to get some underclassmen in. You want to see some pitchers in different spots, but you also want to win, right? So if it's competitive, next thing you know, like Coastal on a Tuesday night playing in Omaha, those 8 pitchers, and then you go get swept. Stupid.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, exactly to your point. Look what happened the weekend after that happened.
Yeah,
2 midweeks, tough games, swept at home. So
play one midweek, play it regionally, be done with it.
Play it regionally, and for the Sun Belt teams, play as good as an opponent as you can to improve your RPI.
I mean, you're going to have a mix, right? Like you're going to play at Wake Forest, you're going to play at Alcorn State. Like you got to play the mix, because it just is what it is. Do you know? I know for college basketball, especially like the mid-major level, like App State, Dustin Kearns sets the schedule, but the AD sets the schedule for football. Do you have any clue how it works for baseball?
I don't. I do think, as Hayden alluded to the other week when he was on talking about Coastal, he said the main reason, because I had asked him if that Omaha series against Creighton was purposeful, like get them some playing time and experience out there before they hopefully get there. He said that's not necessarily the case. He said that the coach for Coastal and the coach for Creighton are very close. They're good friends. So that would lead me to believe what you said for basketball is also mostly true in baseball. I'm sure there's some AD involvement, in some regard, but yeah, I'd say that one. I want to get to Ben's comment, and then we'll loop it back in, because I'll be honest, I don't totally agree with this, but I'll loop you in on this one too, Marv, before we jump into ODU and Texas State. He's saying he thinks the top 2 rivalries in most Sun Belt sports are Arkansas State and Louisiana. I disagree. And then App State and Coastal Carolina. I'd agree more with that one.
Yeah, I would agree more with the second one. Listen, I don't know enough about Arkansas State and Louisiana's history to really comment on that, to be completely honest. As an App fan, I will tell you Coastal's not our rival. And that's no dig at Coastal. It's just the history between us and Georgia Southern is so deep that's going to be our rival. We just want to beat them at everything. Coastal, we've had some really competitive football games with them. Baseball starting to get a little bit more competitive. We won 1 from them last year. We took 2 out of 3 from them this year. But in all sports, I do not consider Coastal our rival.
Recency bias, yeah. I mean, I can see how the kids in school now feel like that might be more of one. But yeah, I agree with you. Like the thought process throughout most of the fan base, I don't think is going to consider Coastal their top rival. I think the kids currently in school would heavily favor that one, to be honest with you. But I don't think historically or the fan base is going to say they're number 1. To me, the best new rivalry, because I don't think there's a ton of history overall, but because of how both fan bases are very vocal, especially in baseball, but in other sports as well, is Louisiana and Southern Miss. I think, you've got Southern Miss as the big time power historic program that, had some years of some downtime, but now they're coming back up, especially in baseball. They never really went down in baseball too much, actually. I'm talking mostly about football there. But in baseball, when those 2 teams match up, you just saw it this weekend. If you were watching Twitter, yes, there was trash talk leading up to it. Yeah, there was stuff thrown around. But when they actually experienced, like when the people that experienced Pete Taylor Park went into the Teague and got to see that game in that atmosphere, they had a lot of respect coming out. They really respect each other because of how much they follow the sports and how much they support baseball specifically. But when you're talking about basketball, Louisiana's got some attendance issues, but they were down a little bit this year too. But last year, that was one of the best matchups in basketball, was Louisiana versus Southern Miss. And then football's not far off from that, right? Both teams aren't the greatest right now, but I mean, it's not going to take much, especially with Louisiana getting a newly renovated stadium in another season or two before it's complete.
And Louisiana's not that far removed from being at the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was what, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. It was like 2 seasons in a row of App State versus Louisiana for their Sun Belt championships in football. And again, in that regard, like I think the two schools and fan bases are too far apart to be a rivalry, but that one was getting a little intense. Like Louisiana really wanted to win that one. They weren't there like thinking that they could. I think even in the one that they ended up winning, if you listen to like Rage and Review and a couple other guys, they were thinking that they just weren't going to win. So I think they'll feel differently now. And then Blake saying actually for years, Cajuns rival was South Alabama. That's starting to change. Yeah, I guess I don't feel that one exists at all right now. To me, Marv, I don't know if you think that one.
No, I mean, I would have thought that, just historically, that the Cajuns and ULM, that would have in-state kind of been in the belt together for a long time. You would think that there's some deep roots there for a rivalry. But, I mean, gosh, we're still kind of new to this if you really think about it, with App coming in.
I think so, and you'll know this one. App in Western Carolina, it was a rivalry, but it wasn't.
It was,
right?
Yeah, it was a rivalry because we played each other so much. But for it to be a rivalry, it has to be contested. And for years, that wasn't contested.
So the ULM Louisiana feels like that to me. Although which is funny is because you what you said about Western and App was true, but for them, it seemed like when Louisiana should win easily, they would lose to ULM. But when it should go the other way around, it was the other. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird dynamic, like where the team that should win is totally inflated, thinking they're going to have a walkthrough practice instead of a game, and then they wake up too late and it's over. So that one, even though it's diminished because one team's usually down, and it's usually ULM is really down by the end of the year, they've pulled out some victories. So it is kind of competitive in that regard, but not with the fact that like the fan base is coming in talking a bunch of trash and they're going at each other's throats. That part's the part that's missing. All right, let's get back to this because Artie's wrapping with a comment here. ODU wins 2-1 over Texas State. Not much else to say, guys.
He's been down on his boys for a long time, and unfortunately, it's been accurate. Like I said earlier when we put the graphic up, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that with 3 weeks left that Texas State would be bottom 4, like threatening to not make the tournament, I'd have told you you're absolutely crazy. I would have thought they were going to be top. They were going to be in that top 6. I don't know. I played them early. I thought they were pretty decent. But I'm going to agree with Artie. I'm going to, if I had to put money on it, I'd say 2-1 ODU.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm almost comfortable enough saying ODU in a sweep. And here's why. Over their last 9 games, ODU is 7-2, including a victory over James Madison and Virginia. Virginia's no slump. So, I mean, they do have a loss in there to Marshall and ULM. So they're not. That's why I'm hesitant to say sweep here, and I think Texas State could steal one.
Anytime you tell me that someone gets beat by Marshall, I'm like, they could have faced that guy. You know what I mean? You could have faced that dude.
And guess what? I think it was because that was the Friday game. So, and I think we've come to find out that we're pretty sure he's the Friday starter typically.
Bryce Bevlins. That's the guy. He is an absolute stud. 1, 2, 3. He's got 3 pitchers of the week so far. Kid's a sophomore too. I don't think. I think your sophomore year's a big year to get drafted, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say he won't be a junior.
I don't see that happening. He's a stud. So yeah, once again, 7-2. You lose to a Marshall. Maybe it was against that kid. A ULM. Maybe your pitcher stunk that night, and you ran into a good pitcher. But they're a good baseball team. That plays them next weekend in Norfolk. So, yeah, I'm going to pick them for the series win.
Yeah, I don't see, when I said that Texas State is coming in with almost the opposite record in their last 9, almost act exactly, pretty close. So yeah, you've got a team that's kind of trajectorying on their way up and a team that's coming down. And like already said, not much else to say. Texas State didn't deliver on what my thought was, and I'm sure Artie's thought was, and maybe Marv, your thought about preseason expectations for Texas State to be one of the 4 or 5 teams that could see themselves in NCAA tournament action when it comes down to the.
All right, so I'm taking back what I said. The Coastal Southern Miss series is not the series of the week. These will be co-series of the weeks, and if you had to flex games, you're going to put this series on ESPN, the other one ESPN2, because this is man, there's going to be a lot of shakeup in the top 6 after this weekend.
Yeah. Already said a throwback uniform for Sunday. I've seen that. I like that uniform a lot. It's the SW Southwest Texas jerseys, I think, and Artie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I always like that stuff. Anyway, back to this one. Yeah, the only ranked team in the conference goes down to Troy. The only reason I favor the other one, okay, is even though Coastal's no longer ranked, we know they're right outside. I mean, they're probably in the top 30 teams. If they're any further back than that, it's 1 or 2 spots for me personally.
They're 23rd in RPI.
Yeah, really, really good team. And so when you go down there and you're playing in a place, in an atmosphere like Pete Taylor Park, no offense to Troy, I just don't know of them to be as rowdy. Although when we had our guys on, our 2 pitchers from Troy, they did speak about how they felt like it's picked up a level with the students and how they were giving the other team a hard time and having a lot of fun with it this year. So yeah, this one could get rowdy. This is, we were just talking about rivalries. This could be one right here. I don't know the historic rivalry or aspect of this, but this one could be good across multiple sports, right? We know the Cajuns had a run in football before Troy's run.
Yeah.
Yep. We know the Cajuns made the NCAA tournament just last year for basketball. Troy has been up in the regular season standings for the last 2 seasons, not quite postseason stuff yet, but and then we've got this kind of a matchup here right now for baseball. So it would not surprise me to see Troy take this series, but I don't think it's going to be easy. And I would probably still lean the Cajuns' way, maybe solely because Kyle DeBarge is just a home run hitter, a threat. I don't know why Southern Miss continued to throw to him last week. I think I heard one situation where there was a guy on second and third and no one on first. And so, you could have walked him and then taken your chances with the next batter. They pitched to him, and I don't know if it was the first pitch, but he took it yard and a 3-run home run. They end up winning the game 3-2. So there's how important it is to, take your shots where they're necessary. But when it makes sense to just walk that guy, I think I'd do it.
Also take your medicine when you're sick.
Yeah.
Man, this is 2 great series. So Troy's coming off the sweep at home. I'm gonna have to flip a coin on this one. I can see it going either way. I really can. I don't know. This is going to be a great series.
Yeah, I do think this one's going to be really good too. We've got Brady Fuller over there. We've got a number of pitchers really for Troy who can get it done. Louisiana, they've got some guys that can throw the heat too. Fitting with the chili pepper or cayenne pepper. I'm sorry. Don't lash out at me, Cajun fans. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, really, I hope at some point this weekend I can have 2 TVs running with ESPN Plus showing both of these games. I don't really actually know if they're on at the same time technically, but if they are, I would love to see both of these because I don't really want to miss the action that you're going to see, especially with what will undoubtedly be the atmosphere at Pete Taylor Park and hopefully be the atmosphere there in Troy, Alabama, as well as they welcome in the only ranked team in the conference currently.
So you will have – oh, man, they're on at the same time.
Ooh.
Friday night. Same time on Friday night.
They're playing under the lights Friday night?
So keep it at 7 o'clock first pitch.
Eastern
Actually,
time.
I'm looking at I'm trying to pad into this. So I'm looking at the Sun Belt Conference, so I know that it is Central Time. They're both at 6 p.m. Central. I'm saying 7 p.m. because I'm on the East, but one of those games is being played in is Alabama Central Time Zone?
Yeah.
Okay. So and so is Mississippi. Yeah. So 6 o'clock their time. So no, it will not start off in the lights, but it will end in the lights.
Gotcha.
On Saturday, the Coastal game gets started an hour and a half earlier than this series. And then on Sunday.
Okay, I found this on the web for this series. And then on Sunday, check it out.
You're just talking to me.
We had a third co-host for a sec. We thought we had Seth back, but it was a woman's voice.
On Sunday, they are an hour apart. So Friday night is your time to have them in simulcast going side by side.
Nice. I'm going to try and work that. I can bring a TV downstairs very easily. So
yeah, I'm at a friend's house, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, just check in on the phone every once in a while. I'll keep you updated if I get to run both TVs. Perfect. If I get control of the TV.
Good
All right.
luck.
This is one James had, or Ben James, sorry, I said the last name first. Ben had a question about what did we think going into this one? Man.
JMU. Sorry, I know Arkansas State just took the series from Texas State. Texas State's on the slide. JMU's a better baseball team. It's in Harrisburg. I'm not calling for a sweep. Wouldn't surprise me, but the safer bet would be 2-1.
I would take this one 2-1 easily as well. We saw Arkansas State start off hot, but they've cooled. They're not cooled and going the bad direction as in Texas State right now, but they're not overly impressive. JMU, I mean, they've been swept, so it's like, what do you do with them too? But I think they're good enough to get the victory here over Arkansas State. I don't know if I got any more crazy detail than that. But again, yeah, like you said, this one's in Harrisonburg, Virginia. They just beat Georgetown in a slugfest, so we know that they can get those types of games won. Yeah. We've seen them win some tight games earlier, but they can score. I mean, to me, it's just JMU's going to put up more runs than Arkansas State, and that's going to allude to them winning games.
Means a lot more to JMU because let's face it, unfortunately, Arkansas State, you're not going to the tournament. It just is what it is. You're 6-14. JMU could still be a top 6 team. So talk about making hay while the sun's out, right? This is one of those you got to win this series if you're JMU. A sweep goes a long way. 2 out of 3 is the bare minimum.
Yeah, and so for JMU specifically, like you said here, with what we probably expect to happen with Arkansas State, they have USC Upstate as a midweek. They got to be careful there. Upstate, I've seen them beat some people.
They're not terrible.
Yeah. They have Marshall the weekend after that. They could win that one. Yeah. And then they go to Virginia Tech for a midweek before the last weekend series, which is going to be tough because they go from Virginia Tech in 2 days later. They play a series in Troy, Alabama to finish the season. So they need these, like you said, very, very badly.
Yeah, these next 2 weekends, you need 5 games probably.
At least, yeah. But like you said, I mean, at this point, I feel like they're going to be a tournament team. It's just going to be, do you want to avoid that play-in round, or do you want to?
100%. Yeah, I mean, so once again, with how jam-logged everything is, they're 11-10. Coastal's 11-10. App's 11-9-1. Like, if you win 5 games over the next 2 weekends, you could be dang third place team in the conference. You never know how things are going to shake out.
Yeah.
Once again, get it while you can.
Yeah. Yep. That is absolutely undoubtedly true. I think that's the last game there. So I'm going to remove that. And we can go back to this nice setup we had. Let's see if we get it bigger. There we go. A little bit bigger. All right, man. Anything else you want to talk about at this point? I think we wrapped up this weekend's games. We did, the quick wrap up towards the beginning with what we had from last week. I guess we kind of wrapped that into everything we talked about going into this week. Talked about the standings.
Yeah.
We talked rivalries. We talked new facilities. Did we cover it all? I think we almost covered it all.
I think we did. No, just excited for these next 3 weeks. There's going to be a lot of changes. Once again, we can debate whether the logjam is good or bad for the conference. I think it's bad for the conference, to be completely honest, but I think it's where we are as a conference because of the quality teams. So really excited to see how this shakes out. And, the standings that you just put up in the next 3 weeks are going to look absolutely different than the way they look now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it, man. And it's going to be a fun ride. It's going to be a little bit nerve-wracking for some of us as our teams are in that clump where you can so quickly be moved up or down. But that's what's also going to make it really fun and enjoyable to watch.
Are we going to the tournament?
I'd love to, but
do we have enough street cred to get press credentials?
Man, that would be cool. We can try it. We can try
it. Push the button, see what happens. They tell us no, we're not going.
Yeah.
What would a Sunbelt baseball tournament be without the number one podcast?
Yeah, I mean, don't you want to put us up in the bleachers as far away from everyone as possible so that
you need to put us on the field with the people, interview players and coaches. That's the only way. It only seems right.
To be honest with you, if we could swing that, I can easily take this whole setup down there. We could do live shows before some of the games and stuff. That would be sweet.
Do it like
doesn't have to be anything fancy, but we can do our own little game day style pre-game Sunbelt baseball tournament show.
You can do Super Bowl press row, man. Just make all the teams come in.
Yeah, just walk through.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we'd at least know a couple players that we could fist bump and be like, "Hey, man, thanks for coming on the show. Good luck today." Unless you're playing App State,
I'm sure they have more people on. But no, I think the conference tournament is going to be great just because of how good all the teams are. Yeah, I wanted to make a comment earlier. We are talking about the depth of the Sun Belt. Like, you take the 5 seed team in the Sun Belt and you put them in any conference besides the ACC or the SEC, and that's still probably the 5th best team in the conference. Anyone that you put them in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. And yeah, I mean, some of these conferences get helped in their IPI that you say like, oh, why is the Big Ten ahead of the Sun Belt right now? Well, unfortunately, the Big Ten can schedule better than a lot of the Sun Belt typically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but who's the 4th? So the 4th best team right now in the Sun Belt is Southern Miss. So just look at Big Ten baseball standings and say, could that team take a series from Southern Miss? I know I'm being very theoretical. Indiana, you know what? That would be a pretty darn good series. Yeah. But if you were to say Sun Belt versus Big Ten, who's going to win? Big Ten. But could Indiana take 2 or 3 from Southern Miss? I don't know.
Well, that's the point too, right? Like, they don't have to, but if you're questioning whether they would or not, that's good enough for me to say, you think you can't go like this and say one's up here and one's down there because you don't know. So at the very least, you're saying these two conferences are at the very least even. But again, I would still put if you look historically over the past, I think it was something I looked back on in like the 5 to 10 year mark. I don't know how you say Big Ten and Sun Belt are even. I put Sun Belt up here. You might have more money, better RPI because of the scheduling aspect. I mean, like, Sun Belt teams don't go play anybody from the Big occasionally from the Big 12, not very often, and definitely nobody from the Pac-12. Which will cease to exist essentially after next year. Anyway, but yeah, the Pac-2.
Listen, the Big Ten cannot claim to be a superior conference because not all of their teams field a baseball team. Until then, no, we can't have that conversation.
I also want to look at their attendance too, because I think more people care and come to games in the Sun Belt than up in the Big Ten country.
I'm going to give you, before we wrap up, now that we're talking Big Ten, and I'm a Big Ten hater. Always have been, always will be, every sport. Number one team in baseball in the Big Ten.
Nebraska.
Nope. Third.
Oh. Third. Oh, they've dropped. Purdue.
Purdue. Yes,
yeah.
It is Purdue. Does Purdue scare you?
No.
Like you're a baseball team. Like, there you go.
When we found out that they didn't all field teams, Purdue was one of the teams I thought might not have baseball. That's where I think about Purdue.
The fact that it's Wisconsin absolutely blows my mind. Like, that school's got plenty of money. And I'm sure there's plenty of kids growing up in Wisconsin that play baseball. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
They have a hockey team, which means they have an ice hockey facility, which means they could field a baseball team, money-wise.
Yeah, so don't talk to me about being a better baseball conference when not every one of your institutions fields a baseball team.
Yeah, and I have heard people say it's a Title IX thing now because they eliminated that. They had, they didn't have enough women's sport. That could be, but you could also add a women's sport really easily too. I feel like maybe that's not true, but
that's an excuse. I don't believe in that. I know they have lots of money, great facilities. Unacceptable.
Yeah. One more thing, totally off topic, but since we're at the end of the show, why not? We don't have to get specific about Arkansas State men's basketball, but you can give your early thoughts on what you think. What does next season look like as far as?
Let me ask you a question. What did they lose? Because teams like App and teams like James Madison got depleted by the transfer portal. What did they lose?
They didn't lose much, and they've added some decent players.
They put us out of the tournament with the top teams losing as much. I'm not going to say they beat. I'm not a basketball guy by any stretch of the imagination. You know that. But the fact that they made it to the conference championship game, right? Yep. And they didn't lose anything. Yeah, they should be pretty good.
Then they also went on a run in I think it was the CBI that they were in.
I think they went
championship
to the
game. Yeah, to the final.
So, yeah, I mean, expectations. If that had happened to App, my expectations going into next season would be high. So if I'm an Arkansas State fan, I'm expecting to have a really good year in basketball.
I think quite clearly they should be number one now. There's still portal movement that could happen and injuries, of course. But if you're just looking at it on paper right at this moment, they're the clear number one favorite for me because of what James Madison and App State both lost. Here's another kicker to this that adds to it. Arkansas State, the best three-point shooting team in the conference last year. I said this before the tournament started too. That's a team nobody wanted to see because when you get a hot three-point shooting team and you're talking about 4 games in 4 days or 5 days or whatever it ends up being in a tournament time, that's not a team you want to see. We saw NC State do what they did, which was very much elongated. But let's just say it only happened in the ACC tournament. Still an impressive run. Still a team you didn't want to run into at that point. That wasn't just all three-point shooting, but Arkansas State also had players at other positions that were dangerous as well. Yeah, I mean, to me, they're the clear favorite, and actually they could be one of the clear favorites in the West as far as football is concerned as well, with a player who's coming locally from us in Jalen Rayner being the head quarterback there. They also have what was the backup quarterback at Texas State last year now transfer. He's going to try and be more of a Armani Edwards in the NFL when he transitions from a quarterback to wide receiver, although apparently he took a decent amount of snaps in the Arkansas State spring game at the quarterback position. So I think you're going to see some gadget plays from him, much like an a la Frank Gore Jr. He's going to line up in the backfield. They're going to line up with 2 quarterbacks. The guys can throw it, run it, or pass it, or catch it. I guess I should say, because throwing it and passing it are the same thing.
Did Troy's football head coach leave?
Yep, he's at Tulane now.
He's at Tulane now. That's right. He took Willie Fritz's job. I think the West is wide open, to be honest with you. I mean, Texas State thinks that they're going to be great. I don't see it.
You're not as confident in Jordan McLeod going down there from James Madison and taking the over the head role at Texas State?
Oh my! Let me try to be as nice and political. If you're leaving James Madison to go to Texas State, you're not that damn good. No offense to any James Madison or Texas State fan, but like as an app guy, right? Like if when Jalen McLeod went to Auburn, you're like, yeah, you're a dude. You went to Auburn. Like, that's where you should be. And he showed out and played really well at Auburn. If you're leaving a top-tier Sun Belt team to go to a bottom-tier Sun Belt team, I mean, you're talking about lateral move in the business world. That's what you did, bro. Like, get out of here.
I think the one thing that we followed closely last year is Artie is alluding to. Ishmael Mahdi is one of the most dangerous players on the field in college football, not just the G5 level, not just the Sun Belt. The kid is just phenomenal. He's returning. And their offense can be extremely potent. However,
their defense
is up. Yeah, they have to improve defensively. That remains to be seen. They have added some pieces, and so it looks like on paper that they will improve defensively. But we've seen that type of thing happen specifically with App State and other teams in this conference as well, where on paper, you are supposed to be much better. On paper, you've got Power 5 players who've transferred down or into your program, and it just doesn't work out. It doesn't look the way it should. So until it's proven on the field and I see it, I can't trust Texas State to be the clear number one favorite, but I would lean towards them still being extremely capable of winning because of the offense. And if the defense does just slightly improve, that should keep them in games.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Sun Belt football next year is absolutely wide open. I mean, JMU got devastated. Coastal without Grayson, like, what are they going to look like? App, we lost some pieces too. I mean, there's no doubts about that. I don't know. I think football is as wide open as it's been in a long time.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, you think, if Signetti doesn't leave James Madison and they don't lose a lot of their players, they probably become the clear favorite after essentially being able to argue that they were kind of the best team in the conference for the last 2 seasons.
If Summerall don't lose Troy, you're like, okay, James Madison, Troy, conference championship game, book your tickets. It is what it is. But and not to go down a rabbit hole on the baseball podcast, but that's where this whole NIL transfer portal really screws things up because I get it, man, from the coaching standpoint. Like, Signetti, he's not a young dude, right? Like, this is his chance to go get some money and prove that he is, I think he thinks very highly of himself. It's a chance for him to go prove to everyone else that he is who he thinks he is. But then you get these players that, the coach leaves and your program's torn to crap. Hell, look at that basketball. Our coach didn't even leave it and our players left. So it is what it is. But to bring it full circle, man, and wrap this thing up, it's 10:15. Super excited for these last 3 weeks. Once again, the deck's gonna get shuffled all over again.
Yes, it is. But this is why it's fun, right? We literally looped in baseball, basketball, and football tonight, and everybody's wanting to continue talking about it because people care about what we're doing here, not us specifically, but the Sun Belt in general. It's a fun conference. It's regional. That's what makes it awesome. Hopefully, all that kind of stuff continues, and we have a good time at the end. Already saying bye. We are going to wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us tonight, and hopefully we see Seth back again next week. But until then,
and Artie, get on the podcast, dude.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit him up. Right after this. I'm gonna send him a message, see if he wants to get on here and share a video aspect with us. As he says, another great show. As always, we appreciate you, Artie, and we will see you guys next week.
Sun Belt Syndicate.